We are taught to see Alexander the Great's encounter with the Gordian Knot as a masterclass in lateral problem-solving. A young king faces a tangle of rope so complex it had stumped every predecessor, and instead of picking at the threads, he simply draws his sword. But we usually get the lesson backward. This wasn't a moment of intellectual brilliance. It was a demonstration of a massive, systemic vulnerability. Alexander didn't solve the puzzle. He exploited a design flaw. The Gordian Knot was never a riddle meant to be answered. It was a failure in defensive architecture that changed the trajectory of the Mediterranean. By celebrating the sword cut, we ignore the structural danger. Passive systems of power are completely defenseless against an actor who refuses to play by the rules. The architect of this failure was King Gordias. He wasn't a general or a prince, but a peasant who rode into town on an ox cart and was declared king by a local prophecy. To cement his new authority, he tied that cart to a post in the temple of Zeus. He used cornel wood bark to create a knot where the ends were tucked deep into the center. It was a test of patience. The goal was to force any would-be conqueror to sit in the dust and work through the logic of the rope. This was a passive test. Gordias built a defense that relied entirely on the attacker's willingness to respect the puzzle. If the challenger ignores the lock, the box offers no further resistance. When authority is tied to an intellectual exercise without an enforcement mechanism, the system invites its own destruction. In 333 BC, Alexander is stuck. He's failing the puzzle before his generals, and his aura of a chosen conqueror is fading. He abandons the rules entirely. He draws his sword and severs the bark. At that moment, physical force overrode intellectual patience. Power does not respect the constraints of a game it didn't agree to. Alexander didn't meet the parameters of the test. He physically destroyed the test itself. Any system that allows an opponent to change the rules of engagement with a single strike is not a defense, it is a target. But imagine a version of Gordias who thought like a strategist. How could he have designed a knot that actually trapped a man like Alexander? He needed a political trap, where breaking rules triggers consequences. Rigging the knot so a sword strike invalidates his claim. Forced to untie it manually, Alexander is stuck for months. His logistics collapse, and King Darius surrounds him. Defensive success depends on making the opponent's victory a structural impossibility. If Alexander fails in Anatolia, the Hellenistic era never begins. Greek culture stays contained within its local city-states. This means Rome never inherits the Greek cultural template. Without those imported philosophies and administrative structures, the Roman Empire as we know it, and its eventual collapse, never happens. Science and governance remain centered in Anatolia and Mesopotamia. Instead of the Latin alphabet, the world evolves from ancient Phrygian scripts. Without the centuries of stagnation that followed Rome's fall, technological progress follows a different curve. The volcanic zones of Turkey provide the geothermal energy to power massive, high-density ziggurat cities. Governance evolves into a meritocracy of systems thinkers. They manage a global network based on the same principles of fractal geometry found in Gordias's original knot. This hypothetical world exists only a few millimeters away from our own. It was avoided only because King Gordias relied on a system that could be defeated with a single piece of sharpened bronze. We live in Alexander's world because Gordias thought like a craftsman. He focused on the beauty and detail of the work. A craftsman expects a fair challenge and respect for the design. A tyrant only cares about the result. In the contest for power, a complex puzzle is useless if there is no penalty for smashing it. The primary rule of power is simple. Never tie your most valuable assets to a passive test. Effective systems ensure that the moment a challenger reaches for their sword, they have already lost. History is written by those who control the blade and who understand that rules are merely suggestions until force is applied. Look at your own systems, your business, your security, your career. Are you relying on a knot that is too clever for its own good? Because somewhere, someone is already holding